Hey class, Prof JC here, and I want to welcome you to our first kind of real podcast. Pretty much every week, there's a couple of weeks, week 4 and week 8, we will not do a podcast, but the rest of the weeks during class, we'll have a podcast just like this one. And so you'll listen to the podcast, and then you'll answer the questions that are right there in the Canvas shell, and that'll be your podcast assignment. My hope is that these videos that I do for you on a weekly basis, that they add value, right? What we're going to be looking at is this book right here, John C. Maxwell, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And here's what I recommend. If you don't have this book right here in your leadership toolbox, I recommend that you get this book ASAP, as soon as possible. And I don't care if you've been leading just a short amount of time or if you've been leading a long time. This book is so much value. It's for the new leader. It's for the senior leader. It just offers so many different reminders that I think are great for all of us. So today what I want to do is we're going to look at two different chapters, chapters 1 and chapter 2, and I'm going to pull out 3 lessons. So let's go ahead and dive in. Lesson number 1, influence comes from connection. Maxwell's first chapter teaches us a powerful truth. Connection is the key to influence. Connection is the key to influence. I want you to think about it. No matter how knowledgeable or skilled you are, if you can't connect with people, your influence is limited. Maxwell illustrates this point with examples of leaders who excelled not just because of their expertise, but because they knew how to connect. And so, because John Maxwell is a little bit older, he'll take us back to the 80s and 90s here, but he talks about Ronald Reagan, for instance, who was known as the great communicator, not just because of his speeches, but because he had the innate ability to connect with people on a personal level. Bill Clinton is another example. His knack for making people feel like they were the only ones in the room earned him a reputation as a connector. And I'll tell you this, I actually had the chance to meet President Bill Clinton, and there's a picture out there somewhere. I've got it somewhere as well. So I've got proof of this. I'm not just making this up. But I had a chance to meet President Bill Clinton when I was stationed in South Korea back in 1998 is when I joined. So it was November 20th, 1998. It was a day I'll never forget. And I could give you the hour version of this story, but I don't have time to give you the hour version, so I'll just make it quick. When he walked in the room, number one, his head walked in about 3 seconds before the rest of his body. His head was he was just such a large individual. I'll never forget that. But my seat was right next to the head table, and he came around, and on my uniform, I had my name, Prater, and he said my name, and he looked me in the eye. And for 2 seconds, I felt like we were best friends. So this is a true story. And I've heard many people, if you study Bill Clinton like I did back in the 90s, many people would talk about that. He was just so incredible at connecting. It's why he won from a state called Arkansas, which is not a state that most people look to for a lot of answers. He came from that state, small city in that state, governed that state for 12 years, and then went on to become president for 8 years. And with all the scandal he brought, and you can look all that stuff up online, the reason why he kept getting reelected is because he knew how to connect with people. I tell people this all the time. In politics, if any of you are ever going to run for office, it's not about how smart you are. You're going to have all the degrees out there, but if you can't connect with other people, you're not going to win. You're not going to win the election. Elections are won by whether you like this or not. This is true, and you can use. I know that on the date that this podcast goes live, that this is going to be that this is inauguration week. This has nothing to do with the current election. I'm not trying to stir stuff up here in the class, but if you look at this past election, or the election before it, or the election before it, the election before it, the person who wins is the one who is able to build the most connection with the most people and influence them to get to the polls and vote. That's how you win elections. Okay. Yes, degrees matter, experience matter, your expertise matters. All that stuff's important, but the person who wins is the person who's able to influence the most people to get to the polls and vote. And how do you influence the most people? You connect with the most people. Okay. So that's what this is all about right here. And I would just say in life, the person who wins the most is the one who's able to build the most influence. And how do you build influence? It's through connecting with people. So here are 3 specific lessons from chapter 1. Number 1, connection begins with common ground. So how you do that is you seek shared interests or goals as the foundation for your communication. Number two, good communicators make their message simple. Okay. If you listen to the best communicators out there, they're not the ones that are putting you to sleep. They make their messages simple. Yeah, I know this is a faith-based university. Some of you may go to local churches or temples or synagogues or whatever. If you've listened to a person who knows how to speak, a faith-based, a religious person, a pastor, a priest, an imam, if you listen to them speak, the ones who speak the best are the ones who keep the message simple. Okay. Think about the greatest speeches you've heard in your lifetime. On the week that you listen to this, it's going to be Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 20th. And I want you to think about his greatest speech, right? I have a dream. And if you listen to the speech, he'll say that over and over and over again. I have a dream. And then he ends with such powerful, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. The message is simple. Okay. It may be a profound message, but it's communicated simply. If you want to be a good communicator, you have to keep your message simple. And energy matters. Enthusiasm and passion can ignite the connection and make your communication memorable. You've got to bring energy. It's amazing how many times, and you're going to have a chance to do it in this class as well. It's amazing to me how many times people give presentations, whether they're virtual or in person, and they bring no passion or energy. No one will ever follow you if you're not passionate about what you speak about, what you lead about. You've got to be passionate. You've got to have energy around it. So here's the takeaway for lesson 1. If you want to grow your influence, you need to prioritize connection. Connection begins with understanding that people respond to those who make them feel valued and respected. Ask yourself these questions. Do I focus on building rapport with those around me, or do I rely on my position or authority to influence others? And here's what I'm going to let you know. Influence isn't about your title. People may respect you because of your title. You're not going to be able to influence them long term because of your title. Okay? Influence is about the relationships that you cultivate. Whether you're leading a team, negotiating a deal, or building a family, your ability to connect determines the strength of your influence. So that's lesson number 1, which again, influence comes from connection. Lesson number 2, focus on others. And this might be the most important thing that I tell you. This might be the most important podcast. This might be the most important thing that you hear. If you get a B- in this class and you get a B- all throughout your work, but you get this, what I'm getting ready to tell you down, you will master what it takes to become successful in life and business and organizations and leadership. Okay. Lesson number 2, focus on others, not yourself. In chapter 2, Maxwell emphasizes that connection is all about others. This can be a challenging lesson, especially in a world that often rewards self-promotion and individual achievement. Maxwell urges us to shift our focus outward. Instead of asking, what can I gain from this interaction? Ask, how can I serve the other person? This shift in perspective requires maturity and a genuine desire to understand others. Now, here's something that we teach in our corporate trainings all the time. It's called with them and with it. With them and with it. Maybe you've heard of this before, this concept before. With them is this. Most people think from the position of with them. Okay. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And once you know that, and you don't get mad about it, and you don't talk about how bad people are because they think that way, that's not how you think at all. Okay. You just understand that this is the human nature. We are all in survival mode most of the time. And so we're consistently thinking, what's in it for me? When you understand that, you begin to think as a leader, you begin to think from the perspective, what's in it for them? And this is how you gain influence with people. Once you understand that all people think this way. So when you get up to give a talk, you're not thinking about yourself and impressing other people. You're thinking about them. How do I help them understand this concept that I'm trying to get to them? When you're getting ready to lead a meeting, you don't walk into the meeting and make it all about you. You realize that all these people sitting there in that meeting that you're leading, they're all thinking, what's in this for me? And then you make it about them. I'm trying to tell you right here, if you get this down and you get nothing else down, this will get you 50% of the way towards the success that you want when you understand this, that it's always about other people. So here are some specific lessons from chapter number 2. Number one, people connect with those who care about them. So if you're trying to focus on others, you've got to care about them. And there might be some days you don't care about them, but what you do is you fake it. Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. You're not always going to care about the people that you lead, but sometimes you fake it. Okay. And here's what I will tell you. If you do not care about people long term, you will never last in business or in leadership. I promise you this. Okay. Long term. Okay. You've got to care about people. You've got to put people first. You know, all the fires have been happening up in Los Angeles. It's been awful. There was a restaurant that went down. One of the most famous restaurants in Malibu got burned up in the fire. And I'm watching an interview about this couple that owns the restaurant. And it was amazing. They're doing well. You can tell just by looking at them that they've done very well for themselves. So the interviewer, the TV interview, was asking how they're doing. And without missing a beat, they said, we're doing fine. Obviously, we're concerned about a few things, but our biggest concern, but she said, we're staying at an Airbnb that our children set up for us. We're going to be fine. What we're most concerned about are our employees. And you just read the comments in that YouTube video, and just everybody was saying what great leaders they must be, because their first thought isn't about themselves and their home or their restaurant. Because my understanding is they lost their home and they lost their restaurant, if you can imagine that. Okay. And maybe the two were combined. I'm not sure. But they said, we will be fine. What we're most concerned about are the employees we have. That's called caring about your people. Okay. And you've got to have that if you're going to have long-term success. Lesson number 2 from chapter 2. It's not about you, it's about them. And we keep talking about that. Connection requires that you to put other people's needs and perspectives first. That's what makes a great leader. Be authentic and relatable. People are drawn to those who are real and approachable, not just those who project an air of superiority. There's something about that. We appreciate people who show us their authentic side, not that they've got it all put together. You know, if you go listen to a great speaker, the speakers that you've learned the most from are the people who are able to relate to you. And that means they talk about some of their hardships, some of the things that they go through. Okay. Be authentic and be relatable. Now, here's a practical example. Imagine you're meeting someone new. Instead of talking about yourself, which is what most people do, ask open-ended questions, which means not yes/no questions, open-ended questions about their life, their goals, and their challenges. People are naturally drawn to those who show interest in them. This principle applies in both professional and personal settings. A leader who takes time to know their team members, their strengths, motivations, and dreams builds trust and loyalty. Likewise, a friend who listens more than they speak strengthens their bond with other people. Look, if you can get this down, this is just a simple thing. You know, because of some of the boards I sit on, I've got to go to, different networking events, and I'm more of an ambivert, and I can certainly be an introvert. So these board type things I have to go to, and these networking events, I'm not a huge fan. And there for a while, I hated to go to these things. And then I switched up my mindset. I probably read this book or another book, book like it, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it talked about the importance of understanding that people just want to talk about themselves. And so all you have to do is facilitate that. So next time you go to a networking event or a meeting, and we've got a networking event coming up here in March, and I'll tell you more about that. Next time you go, talk about, don't talk about anything. Just ask questions. Okay. Use what I'm telling you today, and you're going to help to build influence. Go into the meeting or the networking event, find the first person and just ask him, what do you do? Tell me about you. It is amazing how much people want to talk about themselves. Okay. So keep it focused on them and not yourself. So to live out this lesson, practice active listening. Pay attention to verbal and nonverbal cues. Reflect back what you've heard to show understanding. When you focus on others, you create an environment where connection can flourish. I'm trying to tell you this. That might be the most important thing we talk about this entire class. Focus on other people in your communication. And I promise you, all the success you want in life will come if you can get this down right here. Now, lesson number 3 from the first 2 chapters. Connection requires intentionality. Connection requires intentionality. Maxwell's third major point is that connection doesn't happen by accident. It requires deliberate effort. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to get distracted or rushed in our interactions, but true connection demands presence and intentionality. That means even if you meet someone for 2 or 3 seconds, you shake their hand, you look them in the eye, and you give them 100% of your attention. We've all been in those meetings before where someone's talking to you, but they're looking over your shoulder to see who might be more important that they can go talk to. That's not someone who's going to be great at connecting, and probably not someone who's going to be very successful at life long term. This intentionality is what we're talking about here. It's that being present in that moment, even if that moment is just 3 seconds, if it's just 5 minutes, you give that person all the presence and intentionality that you, some of the greatest leaders that I've ever met, they know how to do this well. You know that they're with you, even if it's just for 10 minutes, they're giving you every single ounce of energy that they have. They're being intentional in giving you their presence. Maxwell suggests small but impactful ways to connect, like maintaining eye contact. That's huge. Start working on that today. Now don't make it uncomfortable for people, right? And there's actually classes on how you do this, and you can look up YouTube videos, but eye contact is key. If you really want people to respect you, you really want to gain influence with people, you want to connect with people, okay? Remember names. I'm not great at that one, but if you can, get that one down. The sweetest sound that people love to hear is the sound of their own name. Most of us know that. Express genuine appreciation for others. Okay, so here are the specific actions to build intentionality. Number one, be fully present. Give people your undivided attention during conversations. That's huge. That's key. Number two, follow through on promises. Reliability builds trust and reinforces connection. Reliability builds trust and reinforces connection. I can't stress that one on long term. If you want to break influence and connection with people, break your promises. Okay. Long term, that's the worst way. Okay. But the opposite is the same. If you want to build trust with people, you want to build influence long term, follow through on your commitments, follow through on your promises. And then number three, express gratitude frequently. A simple thank you can strengthen relationships and show others that they are valued. That's one of the most important things. And especially in today's world, very few people do this consistently. Say thank you, express thanks. So let's break this down a little further. Intentionality and connection in connection means being proactive in your relationships. For example, if you know someone's birthday is coming up, take the time to send a thoughtful message or a gift. If you've had a meaningful conversation with somebody, follow up later to see how they're doing. These actions may seem small, but they signal that you care. Another aspect of intentionality, and this one is huge, preparation. Before a meeting or conversation, think about the other person's needs and goals, not yours, not what you can take out of that person or take from that person. What can add value to this other person? Think about them. What value can you add to their life? By preparing in advance, you show that you've put thought into the interaction, which fosters deeper connection. So here's a challenge for you. Identify one relationship where you'd like to build a stronger connection, then take one intentional step this week to strengthen that relationship. It could be as simple as writing a note of encouragement, or as significant as scheduling time to listen and offer support. Remember, your intentionality turns communication into connection. Okay? So to recap, top 3 lessons. Influence comes from connection. Focus on others, not yourself. Connection requires intentionality. These lessons are profound, but I promise you, if you get this down, what I'm talking about today, the rest of your life will be everything that you want it to be when you can learn how to focus on others. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode of our podcast. If you need me, reach out, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.